Good morning. Welcome to Caribou Weather Dude YouTube channel. I'm your host, Joey Only, here in Wells, British Columbia, here to talk about all the bad news that's going on, right? Well, really my main story for this episode is unsettled week in British Columbia, followed by a very large cyclone coming in off the Pacific coast. I mean, we just had hurricane force winds hitting up the coast yesterday again last night. I mean, this is the pattern. It's going on. It's going on. Oh, hey, I didn't put a hat on yet. My hair looks messy. But you know what? It's not about what's on my head. It's about what's in my head. Some of you don't seem to yet understand this. Okay, this is the Bad News Show. Let's go!
There it is. This is bad news.
My God.
Falling out right now.
Anything could happen.
Get on! Wow.
I'll watch the video later. They try mopping this.
Has shown that local government is the most trusted government. And it's not even close. Like, the provincial government usually is about half.
You are listening to a clip from Wildfires, Floods, and Chaos Communications Podcast, the sponsor of this show for another week at least. And really enjoyed having these guys as my sponsor. It's a great podcast. Tim, he is an information officer. You might be in a community that someday has a fire, and your information officer is this guy, Tim, who's telling you what's going on. So how can we better manage crises and disasters? Join them as they talk about people in various roles about issues, management, crisis communication, and emergency information. You can find that at communicationspodcast.ca. So yesterday I made a whole video about Hurricane Milton, and we're just only going to visit that quickly. Because now we had a whole video yesterday to talk about it. Today we're talking about BC weather. But I said yesterday this might be the story of the week. Well, that's a little bit of an understatement. This could be the story of the year or multiple years. I mean, this hurricane is not going to be taking much for prisoners when it slams into Tampa. And it looks like there's been some waffling. These timings were moved a little bit, so the hurricane's expected to pick up some speed, right? And you can even see that when you look around Tuesday at 8 a.m. You see the difference between Tuesday at 2 a.m. and Tuesday at 8 a.m. and Monday. Well, there's like this, it's chugging along, and then boom, she takes off in the next 48 hours, whatever, right? So it's going to be hitting there maybe earlier in the morning, maybe even overnight on Tuesday, so we'll keep watching to see how this adjusts. However, I'm a weatherman, and I cannot understand weather without understanding climate, and many of you do not want to accept that climate change is happening. You're too intellectually lazy to actually push yourself into understanding the science. I think a lot of it is that it's above your intellect. It's above your literacy. You don't understand the big words, and then you think, well, that's just a bunch of science people saying bullshit. Okay, Milton is every bit of a Category 5 meteorologist, Eric Graves is saying this morning. We'll have to go through some records, but Milton is definitely close to breaking the all-time record for rapid intensification for the Atlantic Basin. It's strengthened by 95 miles per hour in 24 hours, more than triple the RI threshold. People in Tampa Bay will not have seen anything like this. There are other people saying, well, they have. Florida sees hurricanes, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I don't just say things for nothing, okay? There's always a point to why I say them. Okay, here's why I said it. Let's look at this. What does this say right here? It says, there's only been one major hurricane that's made a direct impact in Tampa Bay in recent history and happened more than a century ago. Okay? This is a very, very bad situation. Hurricane Milton heading straight towards the Tampa area nonetheless. Going to just glance off the Yucatan Peninsula today. Going to send some wind there. That's the story of the week. So we'll be watching that as we go on more and more everywhere. Everyone's going to be watching that. Here's our big low up there. Bland, gloomy, crappy weather here in the Caribou. Those of you down south, you're still sitting there in the southern interior going, wow, we haven't got our rain yet. You know, like I was saying on Saturday, you know, this is more or less our situation right now in Canada. Our only real story BC-wise is rainfall warning for Zeballos and Tassis. That's on Vancouver Island, and near 100 millimeters of rain. A moisture-laden funnel system will give heavy rain to the northwestern sections of Vancouver Island, particularly near Zeballos and Tassis. Heavy rain started and will continue through the day today. Heavy rain will ease in scattered showers tonight. Low-lying areas could flood and things like such. If we go to the very top of northern Ontario, up to Polar Bear Provincial Park, wind gusts near 80 going on up there. Just inside the Quebec border, frost still advisory there, and then we're seeing kind of the last remnants of storm moving through. That affected Ontario all weekend. That's the one that made the wind in the prairies. That's the one that came through BC last week. 69 millimeter sun. So it's about to finally stop being a story. 80 mils maybe up to at Lac Saint Anne. and up into Gaspésie, Franklin. There's 30 to 60 mils there. We got this other spot, 80 to 120 at Clark City. So yeah, very interesting. Rainfall warnings are issued when significant rainfall is expected. I love when they say things that are just so blatantly obvious, but it's apparent to me that you have to be blatantly obvious with people because they're so illiterate and clueless. I just can't believe some of the things that people are saying to me, and they think that I'm going to respect them for it and take them seriously. So I get it. Environment Canada. You got to make things extra simple for people, I guess. And our only story, really thunderstorm-wise, today is going on in Ontario. Maybe some strong storms in that Niagara escarpment country down towards Lake Erie. Here's our 500 millibar animation. That's the top of the jet stream. There you can see Hurricane Milton going through. This is a GFS modeling, this animation, so it's got its own opinions. We're going to see some different solutions as to what's going to happen with Hurricane Milton, and unfortunately. But here's BC really sitting in the garbage a lot of this week. Like we're going to end up on the north side of the jet stream at some point, it looks like, and we may get some cooler weather this week because of it. All in all, though, I don't think that this is a week so far. There's a lot of major stories until we get into the weekend, until we get to what could be the next atmospheric river pattern that's coming in. I see some really strong storms developing out in the Pacific Ocean. I was saying a few weeks ago, we had the very large storms that hit the Vancouver area, for example, back in 2006. There was multiple repeat storms, and this has been kind of shaping up that way for sure. We've had multiple impacts on the coast from storm after storm after storm after storm after storm after storm, one after another. It's not stopping. And then when I want to stop, and then more comes in and knocks us straight in. So anyways, we're in that pattern, but that pattern happened in November and December, okay? And this began in September. So we're into some weird territory here in terms of how powerful the storms are at this time of year. Yeah. And I think this next one definitely qualifies. Again, GFS model here on this one from Pivotal Weather. GFS model, that stands for gives fall snow. That's the joke amongst meteorologists, at least. Here's Milton down there. You can see grazing the Yucatan Peninsula, so maybe affecting them a little more than we thought yesterday, according to this modeling. We'll see about that. But still slamming up into the Tampa area. And this model showing it wanting to go a little closer to the Carolinas this time, so just grazing up the coast. So I'm really concerned that we could see a small change in forecast track bring that hurricane up into the Carolinas. Nonetheless, as you can see, BC sitting, by Friday, we've just already gone through a week here. Here's what's going on today. This storm's been lashing up the coast. It's not very deep, 990, 991. It's doing what the other ones have done before. It's losing some steam, but then kind of sending some of its energy inland and maybe making some new storms inland. So we'll be watching into the prairies to see about that. But not doing very much. High pressure kind of sitting in briefly Thursday. Yeah, more or less catching a break again. I mean, it's going to be kind of a crappy week altogether. We're going to catch a short break there at the end of the week, and that's kind of like how last week was. But then you see the storm really sink in by the time we get to Friday. You see that getting at a 950, super deep. Okay, super deep. And the other little guy down here, not so much of an issue, but super deep, and very long tail in behind us. We got this atmospheric river setup kind of happening, and we got very cold inflow going on, and you got very warm inflow going on at the same time. So that's what makes mid-latitude cyclone. That's different than hurricane cyclone. This mid-latitude cyclone here, deepening. Along this front is going to be an incredible amount of rain, wind, and snow, and it's going to be one of those times where if you're on a boat out there in the ocean, that North Pacific, you must be crazy. Really. So getting down to 950s, getting down to some of the same values we saw with Hurricane Milton. Hurricane force low, right? Slamming through, giving BC multiple waves. So this is really next weekend story. We're going to look at this week a little bit, but this is what we're preparing for. We're preparing for this storm to send snow, wind, rain, and all hell into BC, starting sometime this weekend, maybe even late weekend. We'll see how the timing shapes out. Vancouver Island taking heavy rain today on Monday. What is the date today? It's the 7th of October already. Where did the year go? Some of you just like it when I'm funny and silly, and some of you actually like it when I talk about science, talk about the things I actually know. Unbeknownst to some of you, I am highly trained and educated. Okay, this is not a channel of a guy just talking out of his ass. So let go of that idea. I had this guy on there saying, well, you don't know much about climate science, but you know lots about weather. Well, you can't separate the two, idiot. And the truth is, you don't know much about climate science. So Tuesday, seeing some snowfall values up there in the Coast Mountains. That's into some of those bigger mountains in the Coast Mountains, Chilcotin country. Up in northern BC, sure, a little bit of rain would be moving through North Prince George. So most of the precipitation in the interior this weekend, again, is going to sort of mirror what we've been seeing lately, which means, you might see some in the Rockies. You might see some pass through northern British Columbia. You might see a lot on the coast. So that's more or less the entirety of how she's been playing out. Tuesday, seeing more and more of that mix of freezing rain and whatnot, but also then you get into that snowfall as you get higher in the mountains. So we're expecting some larger snowfall totals. Caribou, you might see some unsettled skies. You might see a little bit of precipitation move through on Tuesday. However, most of that seems to be heading out towards Mackenzie, Williston, up maybe to the Peace in terms of that. Now, if you're definitely by Telegraph Creek, you're going to be seeing some rain and snow mix. Your mountain's going to be getting dumped on. That corridor out towards from Terrace to Prince Rupert, probably going to be some nastiness on the highway there. We are concerned about some of the highways down southern BC that might take just a little bit of snow at points here and there. That always happens at this time of year where you're driving from Kelowna to Merritt and you're like, wow, it's 18 degrees, and you get up in the mountain pass and it's snowing and it's slippery. So make sure you have your winter tires on. They are expecting that at this time of year. We come into Wednesday, week low is kind of dying out there like we saw in the earlier graphic. That week low dies off. Still lashing in some snow up in the mountains. So some snowfall totals, sure. You look towards, by the time you get to Wednesday, look towards maybe Revelstoke area out to Golden. You might see some rainier looking skies there. McBride, sure. Valemount, maybe here in Wells as well. Sure, that eastern Caribou looking like maybe see some of that. Then maybe the bit of the Kootenays. But all in all, we're still in that gap where towards the border country and especially down through central interior, you're not getting much for rainfall, right? And that's really been how you've been getting it. So snowfall overnight as you come into Thursday, up in some of those same places I just mentioned. Then we catch our break on Thursday, and okay, well, not much to talk about here. We'll just zoom on by. So nothing happens Thursday, and Saturday looking okay. Maybe now in the modeling too. We'll see about that. But when this finally comes in, she's going to come in hard. She's going to come in windy, and we'll be watching this story all week. A little far out, and I don't like to make very exact predictions very far out because things change. What's happening is you got these giant computers and you're stuffing all the data you can into them, right? All the data, all the world's data that can possibly, these giant computer, and it's processing all this data and it's doing these runs and it's spitting out solutions as to what it thinks is reasonable. And sometimes you got to be careful when you're watching modeling, especially, I don't often on this channel go to numerical models, which is like, more of like a chart full of like point forms and minuses and pluses and it's sort of complicated. You want to see a map. You want to see something that's very readable here so that you can understand it. I get it because you're not a meteorologist, and I don't want you to be because then I wouldn't have an audience. But I do want you to learn a lot. So anyways, the models will spit out sometimes crazy solutions and you can't get too caught up in them. So we'll just have a look at where the rain's going to be. As I was saying, a lot of these southern interior places not getting much. Cranbrook not really getting anything. You're kind of like a long ways away. Whereas you're on Vancouver Island, in the next 48 hours, you're probably going to see some 60 mils up there and whatnot. If we expand this a little further to Wednesday night, those totals go up again, maybe 80 mils going up there. West coast of Haida taking some solid rain for sure. Up to Ketchikan, places like near Terrace, maybe a little less in Terrace itself, but definitely in the rainy belt, Surf Inlet, out towards Bella Coola. Down here, you're still getting 60 mils there. Caribou Mountains here in Wells, looking at 26. This is just rainfall, so some of this will be snow as well. We'll look at that as well. But coming through the week, let's go up to Friday. And again, most of the central interior not seeing much, but you do have this risk here in the passes that you could see a little bit of precipitation coming down. So if you're going up the Coquihalla either direction, you could come into some of those flurries, right? The same thing going over the Revelstoke, same thing going into Jasper. You could at certain times of day, if you catch the timing right, experience some flurries. So, be aware of that if you're making travel plans. And, by next week, that's when our storm will really kick into high gear, and we're looking at what that's going to mean. Well, it's going to mean really crazy rain totals, and maybe by the time we get halfway through this month, everyone will have taken a little bit of rain. But when I say a little bit, 2.3 mils, no, that central interior, you're still in drought conditions. So we're really concerned that we haven't seen much change in that. We'll be looking at some new snow here in the Caribou Mountains. Could see 40 centimeters or things like that in some of the bigger mountains, but that's no one lives there. Of course, that's Quesnel Lake there, and no one lives in the middle of these mountains. Sure, but maybe here in this part of the Caribou, by the time we get to the middle of the month, we could be seeing some sizable snow already piling up in the Wells area, so maybe 10, 20 centimeters, whatever. And if we get into a cold enough spot, maybe we could look at temperatures briefly before we go. If we get into a cold enough spot, though, it's quite likely that we're going to see some snow that we got snow on the mountaintops here that's already sticking and staying, but not a crazy amount of it. No, definitely some spots up there that have melted off, but the Cow Mountain at my window is a little lower in elevation. But we're looking at some large snowfall totals up the coast mountains over this next 2 weeks. Again, we're really not in a whole lot of a difference, but this week is not what we're expecting to see a lot of that. Okay, so the tallest mountains will take some. They might take a little bit of rain too. They might melt off a little bit, sure. But it really isn't until we get into next week where we start seeing a larger jump in snow totals. So let's not get too carried away with looking at specifics yet. And it will keep fairly warm still down there this week, okay? So on the Alberta side, this is pretty interesting, but you're getting that sort of Chinook kind of thing going on again, where you could see some 20s down in Alberta and southern Saskatchewan and high teens in Winnipeg and whatnot. Go to Vernon, southern BC on Tuesday, you're still looking at 19s, 20s, 22 in Osoyoos, so very warm down there. There's a tale of two provinces, right? So up here, it's hard for people in the Caribou and Prince George and North to imagine how nice your weather has been. I mean, maybe it's been a little bit gloomy at times, but you've been getting some pretty nice temperatures, right? So, at nighttime, you're going to see that drop, and you're going to see the mountains. Anyone who's living near the mountains, anyone in northern BC, you're going to be seeing some chance of frost and things like that, maybe. If you got things to do, I would maybe circle Thursday, Friday, Saturday to go get your firewood done or finish winterizing outside, things like that. It'll be a good time to be. And you can see, if we go back to that Sunday or that Saturday, you can see some of the crazy winds that are going to be hitting. And we'll be talking next episode how bad are the winds going to be, because it's not going to be just a story for the coast. There's going to be a story for the interior as well, especially wind-wise. So by 5 p.m. on Monday, we're going to be seeing a lot of this kind of thing hitting the Vancouver Island there, right? So up and down, maybe Tofino going to take some heavier rain totals. It's not looking really nice here in my part of the Caribou. Go north of Prince George, not going to be very nice. Going to see some showers come through, whatnot. Maybe some of those will have a little bit of convective squalls. We've seen a lot of days, we've seen lightning bolts going off somewhere. A little bit of snow overnight on Tuesday, coming into the morning on Tuesday. A lot of precipitation moving through. Going to be pretty rainy, pretty miserable as you come into Tuesday afternoon. Maybe the Caribou will start to slowly ease out of that rainfall for a little bit. So kind of a gross weather for the next day or two before we kind of get into this break in the weather that's going to be happening this week. So break in the weather showing itself a little bit already as we come into Wednesday morning, right? So there we go. We'll just skip ahead. There you go. There's some Wednesday afternoon. Maybe I spoke too soon, but we got that. There's those lightning bolts in the Caribou. So, I mean, all in all, break in the weather. But what that is allowing for is that little bit of moisture that's moving through, and you got a little bit more sunshine in there, but you got a little bit colder. It's much colder at the top, so you got these large clash between cold and warm, and wet and dry, and kind of just like that. So anyways, thanks everybody who's unsubscribed lately. I just thought it's hilarious that people they'll follow you until you say one thing they don't agree with, and then they'll mock you and laugh at you, right? So it's like, I'm sorry that you don't understand what I understand. I'm trying my best to communicate that to you. I'm trying my best to communicate it to you. I'm trying my best to help you see what it is that I've seen that's giving me this sort of insight as to how the world works. And you're like, well, how does Joey always get his forecast so right? And maybe if you've just been watching me on the YouTube, you don't get this, but for 10 years on Interior Weather and Wilderness Watch, we got 39,000 people in the group, right? For 10 years, people cannot find examples of me getting it wrong. Like, in any serious way. Yeah, I mean, maybe sometimes 20 mils landed when we thought maybe 10 would or whatever. I don't generally get too specific like that because I know those things change when we look out, right? We know that things aren't always going to be easy to predict to the exact millimeter, sure, but the overall trends, what's going on, I've never really been wrong in that, and that you could say, well, you're just looking at web models, blah, blah, blah. Long before we had these web models available, I was still doing that, okay? These are to help you understand, sure, here's that next atmospheric river coming in. You know it's going to be a good one. You know it's going to be big time. We don't have total confidence as to who's going to get how much and what, but we know there's going to be some 80-kilometer-hour winds and higher out there in the ocean. We saw 130s and higher at times in the last big storm that came through, right? So let's not fool ourselves. This one's dropping down to 950. It's got an intense shape to it. It's a scary looking storm. This is a very, very strong, powerful mid-latitude cyclone. Okay, and it's dropped considerably down that central low pressure, and it's going to be sending quite a bit of anger at us. So we're really, we're going to be watching to see how does this ribbon of moisture play out. How much does it stick together? How much does it feed? How much is it able to stay an actual proper atmospheric river, right? So there's different categories of an atmospheric river. There's category 1 through 5, and 5 obviously being really crazy. And we've seen some 5s in the North Pacific over the years. In fact, for a brief time, one that we had 2 weeks ago or something to that effect was a 5, although it didn't really have too much impact on, rain-wise inland. It did create some very, very, very powerful thunderstorms when it passed through, and you recall that now, all the damage down there in southern BC from these straight-line wind events that seemed to have happened there. People thought it was a tornado, but I saw no evidence and reported to Northern Tornado Projects that there seems to be no evidence whatsoever that there was a tornado here. Just the last thing I do want to sort of point out today, people have been going on like, well, you're good at weather, but you don't know nothing about the climate there. You don't know science about climate. Well, the science is all corrupted. No, science is not corrupted, okay? Science is a methodology for discovering fact. And maybe you don't understand what that process is and what it means. So not only do we have like the most rapid intensification of a hurricane ever possibly going on right now, there's still lots of fire happening in northern Canada, okay? They're pretty high up. Still fires burning in the more or less Arctic. That's still going on. In fact, we had, in the last 2 years, more fire burn off the boreal forest than anybody thought was even completely possible or imaginable. I don't feel personally guilty. I don't sit around at night going like, oh, I'm a human, I'm part of the problem. No, I'm a poor guy who lives with very little. No one in my family history, you look at either side of my family history, farmers and degenerates and drunks, and my mom's side are Dutch farmers that came over after the war. My dad's side are Irish type, part native, Johnsons, tough guys, drunks, poverty, big poverty. Never had a chance, my family, to make any impact on the overall direction things are going on planet Earth, okay? I don't feel guilty. Am I mad? Yeah. Does it drive me crazy to see people say, well, it's not happening, I'm going to stick my head in the sand like a goddamn ostrich? You can't stick your head in the sand like an ostrich because eventually you'll get drowned. You're telling me I'm scared, but you don't want to look at facts because you're too afraid they might be right. Do I feel guilty when I drive to the store to get food to feed my kids? No. I didn't even ask to be born. Okay. Thanks for everybody who's been supporting me. Anyways, I gotta keep this show is going on way too long today, and I'm sorry. It's a couple nice things here. Cards that came in the mail. Thanks so much. Thanks, Joey, for all you do. Use the small donation for whatever makes you happy. Best wishes from the southeast corner of the Caribou, Lac de Roche, and thank you very much. Really nice. Thank you for the card. Rejoice always from Thessalonians. Okay. Dear Joey, I hope you don't mind the card. I'm moving next week, and most everything is packed up. Please buy yourself some nourishing food. I did, too, actually. Thank you. I bought a box of meat from the butcher's there the other day, and last night, and you know, I'm a Dutchman, so I always cheap out. You know, at least on my mom's side, I'm a Dutchman. I always cheap out, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna getting the beef box. I'm not getting the. I had a New York steak last night. You know how long it's been since I've had something like that to eat? Man, it was good. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Moose Island Foods and Diggy's Diner. I do have the Vivor weather station right here, and I've been sick for days. I had the kids here. I haven't put it up yet, and I'm sorry I'm delayed on that, and it's not because I'm not thankful. It's just because I've been grumpy, too, if you haven't noticed. Sick and grumpy. Okay, nourishing food. I think you can make a pot of chili or stew for $20. Thanks for leaving being the best weatherman. I appreciate. And other side, your work to give us accurate forecasts. Take care of yourself, please. Have a lot of people who appreciate and admire you, and thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. You know, if you just only found us in the YouTube, you might not understand that this community's been going on for 10 years. Forecasting online is maybe a new thing over the last couple of years for me to start doing. Sorry I don't have fancy writing papers. So glad you reached out for help, feelings. We are all blessed to have your service. Keep up the good work. You know, so thank you very, very much. I really appreciate the cards, you know. So thanks, Kathleen and Kay Otis, and I'm not sure if this is Dillian or Jillian. I'm sorry, I can't tell if that's a D or a J. And and another one here. Thanks, everybody. Thanks. Please join the Patreon. I'm looking for a new sponsor, so if you want to have some advertising on the channel, not every video gets watched a lot, but some get 21,000. So, you know, consider this for a sponsorship. So that's been a very long episode today. I'm very sorry for talking too damn long. Okay. You know what I do at nighttime when I'm bored? I watch lectures from places like Yale University on meteorology. I keep trying to learn. Have a spirit of desiring knowledge and truth, and it will serve you well. Okay, bye for now.